Facebook Live, I will go ahead and just welcome all of you who decided to join us for our first book club, Final Call Book Club, Women Who Heed the Final Call. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are so excited about this. This is kind of an informal gathering here. I'm just with my sisters, and you're allowed to join us and be a part of this. And I have to introduce this beautiful panel up here, or this beautiful these sisters who have joined me to expound on this dynamic and powerful paper, the Final Call newspaper. So we're gonna just start. Gonna go around. First of all, my name is Tamiko Muhammad, and
Sister Taquayla Muhammad. Sister Aisha Muhammad.
Sister Donna Muhammad.
And we are so excited. Aren't you all excited?
Yes.
Are we ready to get down and do this?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so the purpose of this, what I really wanted to accomplish is that we have more information about this paper, the Final Call newspaper. And as we go through this little time, we're going to talk about one particular article in this paper, but some things that I wanted to just kind of share openly is the Final Call is kind of thematic in nature. Like we have our cover story, we have the story on the front, and then the information that is inside of the paper is relatable. Everything is relatable. Everything is thematic, and then we also have what no other paper has are the divine guidance of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And we're going to kind of do a little experiment tonight on how this paper is very valuable to our community. So what we want to do is start, this is actually volume 38, number 24. And this is in March 19th. It's not too old. Actually, it was during the when we were celebrating International Women's International Day. So this was a paper that was thematic for that particular event. And it is compiled of a lot of articles dealing with women. And one of the subjects that's very, something that's happening a lot in our community is domestic violence. So that is what we're going to be dealing with. I want to send a shout out. I don't know if she's here, Sister Sherilyn Muhammad. We're going to be dealing with your article. Sister Charlene Muhammad, Black Women and the Ugly Reality of Domestic Violence. So this is where we're going to start this evening on the paper. So we've already studied the paper, but you know, we just want, if you all want to chime in, if you have anything to say, I'm gonna just kind of be asking some questions and just kind of see what's on the sister's heart, so that we can kind of really pick apart this really big subject. And it's very sensitive. I know it's very sensitive to a lot of us. However, another aspect of this is to bring information, bring knowledge, bring what the Final Call and only the Final Call can offer, and that's right guidance. It is the only paper on this planet that's going to give you right guidance, that's going to give you the truth. And there are some things that, from the perspective of the Final Call and from the perspective of how we are taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that I really feel and we feel that can help us in this topic. And I think it's timely for us to kind of deal with domestic violence from this aspect. And I pray that we could have an open mind and open heart and a spirit to kind of do what really is necessary, and that's go to the root of domestic violence. We are taught in the Nation of Islam that you can't deal with branch knowledge, or you can't deal with anything surface. You have to go to the root of it, because that's the only way you're going to solve any of our problems in our community.
That's right.
So once again, the title is Black Women and the Ugly Reality of Domestic Violence. So we are looking at this article. These are 4 women who have been killed And when I opened it up and saw their smiling faces, I thought they were alive. I was like, oh my goodness. But when I started reading this, this is a devastating reality that we're facing. So we have one sister, her name is Aisha Fraser Mason, who is 45. She was allegedly stabbed to death by her ex-husband in front of their two children, 8 and 11, and her sister. All right. This next sister, Tamara O'Neill, her ex-husband, Juan Lopez, shot her execution style during an argument November the 19th in the parking lot of Mercy Hospital in Chicago. After an argument, Stefani Valerie, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, her husband, Michael Valerie of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, left her home. She left her home and returned and stabbed her. So he left and came back and stabbed her. Next sister, Kashan Jeffries. Her estranged husband, Daniel Stegall, kicked her door in and shot her in the head in front of their 3 children. So this is what we're going to kind of talk about. I'm going to really need you all's help to kind of deal with this. And I want to take some time to just kind of break it apart. And because even though we've talked about this over and over and over again, the laws, the government, the policies, everything that is geared towards preventing domestic violence, we really need to ask ourselves the question, is this working? Is this enough? So let's get started with what some of the advocates are saying. So they say that domestic violence and assaults against Black women still draw too little attention and outrage. So would anyone like to comment? How do you feel about that? Anyone like to comment?
I think that's absolutely the case. And I think we have to go into the root of why so little outrage is drawn when it's a Black woman. It's almost like, so what, big deal? We're expendable. We're expendable women. And that's clear from the coverage, and that's clear from the history of how Black women have been treated ever since slavery. We don't hear it, and in this very article cites statistics on even the perpetrators of the crimes against Black women tend to get less sentences than perpetrators of crimes against white women. So they've been held up as the standard, and we're just kind of like we're this byproduct of justice, if you will, if that makes sense.
Yes, ma'am. Would anyone want to?
Yes, I would. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much.
I want to talk about the sister here, Aisha Fraser Mason. Actually, her husband was actually my old landlord.
Wow.
Yeah, he was my old landlord, Mr. Mason. And the scariest thing about domestic violence is that they don't have a face. You don't recognize domestic violence because they're not walking around looking mean and looking angry. So knowing him, you would never in a million years think that he was that type of individual. He's from Cleveland. And she actually, as a teacher, she was a teacher at an elementary school I graduated from. And so it hits kind of close to home because these folks are right there. But I think with domestic violence, it doesn't cause a lot of attention because, again, we as Black women are not saying anything. We're hiding it. We are keeping it under wraps because, again, it is a stigma. You don't want to call the police because, again, you don't want the police to come out and arrest them or kill them because that nowadays that may be the possibility. And, again, they don't care. We in the hospital, and then you go to the hospital and you're back with the man. So a lot of times they don't look at it as serious. You gotta love yourself and love your life to make it serious to you. So it's just, again, Domestic violence to me doesn't really have a face. It doesn't have a face until somebody's actually murdered. When they're dead, then you realize, oh wow, now we saw the signs. Or you're looking at the social media and you're like, oh, they were crying out for help. But initially, when you see a woman who had experienced domestic violence, and I use myself, nobody knew that I was in a domestic violence relationship. Nobody knew that because I didn't say anything. I didn't come around. You didn't see bruises. You didn't see me, looking sad or crying out for help. But it was internally. So again, it's not a big outcry because nobody knows.
If I can speak to that last point she made too, when she talked about not seeing external bruises. We say domestic violence, and then we take that word as to mean, strictly physical.
Yeah.
But domestic simply means at home.
Yeah.
Like we have travel abroad
Right.
or travel domestically is just within the states.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many levels of abuse. There's financial abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Maybe you're held hostage.
Yeah.
And that's
Money.
and we may not even realize we're being abused when something like that occurs,
Right.
where there's this withholding of money. If you don't do this, I'm not giving you money for groceries,
Right.
or these different games that we play. There's verbal abuse, emotional abuse, where I make you feel so bad
Right.
about yourself that at that point, then I can do anything to
You're a
you.
slave at that point.
And then I isolate you from your
Right.
family, from your strength, your power bases. You have, as Sister said, sexual abuse.
Yeah.
There are married women who are raped by the husband.
Husbands, yeah.
Just because you're married does not mean that you cannot be raped
Yeah.
by your husband. So again, as Sister Tequila said, we don't always see it, so it's not taken seriously. And then we do have that catch-22 where it's like, we see what's happening to our black men on the other side with the police.
Right.
So we are hesitant, we're distrustful of calling the police into the situation because we're afraid of how it's going to
How it's
turn
gonna
out. But at the
end.
same time, women are losing their life.
They are.
Miss Mason, this wasn't the first time.
That's right.
He had already served time in 2014
For punching
when he
her.
had smashed, he punched her like 20 times,
yeah.
and then smashed her head against the dashboard. They're in a car.
And that's just
Her
reported.
children were in the back seat. Somebody happened to call the report in. They said there's a car stopped and there's fists flying. And she got thrown out the car. She had to run for help. So, but there's still that fear factor, but that fear factor is causing us to lose our lives because here we are now, years later, we don't want to report it, but then women end up dead.
That's right.
And I wanted to add, because Sister wrote it in her article, it says that she tried to escape at a red light, but he caught her, he punched her again, and bit her face. Okay, so.
And this is a respected,
Yes.
and there were women, but I think what ate me up too was when character reference were to come about, because this man was an attorney, he was a politician. One was a female judge that came to his defense. So part of the problem too is us not acknowledging one another.
That's right.
Making excuses,
Yeah.
not standing by a sister
That's right.
when she's being
saying she's being abused. Right.
How can you look at another black woman, her face is smashed in, and then make apologies?
So I kind of have a question about that. So you're talking about this man using his influence, and the leniency that he's receiving is from his colleagues, in that field or whatnot. So just can you kind of go a little bit more into it about that, because you're right. Why would she support that? And then, of course, it's a woman. Why would she even? What would give us what would make us want to support someone who we know is doing something wrong, or could be possibly doing something wrong? What is it that when we have some kind of status, or when we have some kind of position, or when we have some kind of name, and we're not, doing well at home, or the family, or we're not treating our family well at home yet, and still they can find support. Can you kind of go into that and kind of explain that a little bit?
I would say it's more like, to me, superiority worship. They, so that happens with the police. They stick together. It's just like black on black crime. If something happens, well, not black on black crime, but if something happens and the police officer say stop somebody, he pulls his guns out, he assaults the man for no reason, they'll try to cover that up first.
Because they have a certain code.
Yeah, they have a code and they know that. And so, it's our word against their word. So who are you going to believe when it comes to that? Oh, well, they lie. Black people lie. They ran a light. When you get a ticket and you may have not read a light, it's your word against that police officer. So what can you do at that point? So again, you can be trying to represent yourself, but like she said, if they have a certain code, they're going to stick with, they're going to stick together. So that's what they saw him as. He's this big person and she's just his wife who's saying he abused her, but technically we don't know what it could have been. He could have said, oh, she abused me first. She hit me first. And I hit her back.
And I think that's another issue, because black women are viewed through these stereotypical lenses that, this label of an angry black woman. And this label that, it's not just one black woman, it's black women as a whole. And it kind of devalues us in a sense where it makes us unworthy to be believed, to be defended, to be protected. And so we don't protect one another. Even me knowing, a black sister, you should be able to feel the pain of another black sister. But if I don't value me, if I don't think I'm worthy to be protected, to be believed, to be defended, how do I feel about my sister?
Right.
Well, Sister Aisha really hit the nail on the head right there too, in terms of how we are viewed, and how we view it. We are painted with that broad stroke.
Right.
We are. You can't be a confident black woman or a strong black woman without being the mad black woman. Or I gotta go all the way to the other side and I'm a feminist, I'm a feminist woman. And and I gotta call out this masculine toxicity, which which is ridiculous. But then also, as Sister Tequila said, sometimes we don't know. Somebody can look upright and stand, an upright person in the community, respected. So we don't want to believe that they would do that.
They would do that. Yeah, that's what.
And as Sister Aisha said, so clearly, maybe you must have provoked him or something, because he would never.
Because he would never.
Do that. But if he did what he did in 2014 and he did it again, he's done it before.
Many times.
This is plenty times. That was not the first time. But we don't know what happens in people's houses.
And we don't take the extra energy to investigate.
Exactly.
And so another issue is we don't care. I think that we don't care enough about one another, that if someone makes this claim and says, I'm being abused, I think that as a community, it should be our job or our duty to look deeper into it, because it could be something very real. Abusers are manipulative, so he could be telling you anything.
Exactly.
And can't necessarily take his word for it. It's our job to investigate these kinds of things.
And I want to add too, they feel like it's so easy to leave. For me, I didn't even know I was in a domestic violence relationship, because a typical domestic relationship is, okay, my food's not hot enough, I'm mad, he's slamming things, throwing dishes, punching you in your face or something. That's not what I experienced. It wasn't to that extreme. It started subtly, where it's like taking my phone, closing the door, I can't leave. I'm in the house, taking my car keys. So now it's like we're in an argument, or he's starting an argument with me, and I'm like, okay, I'm about to leave because this is escalating. Now I take your phone, now I take your keys, you can't go anywhere. Or now I'm standing in front of the door, so now you have to go by me in order to leave. That's how it started. And again, you don't think you're in that type of relationship. Then it escalates to, now I'm throwing things across the room, I'm hitting walls, I'm hitting things to scare you, to make you uncomfortable. So it started with, now I'm uncomfortable, and of course I'm not feeling afraid, but deep down anxiety is kicking in. I am afraid because this man, if he's 6'2", he's 200 pounds, and I'm small. What could he possibly do? He's not physically hitting me yet, but he is he's big and he's threatening me, and I feel threatened. So yeah, I'm intimidated. So that's how it starts. So again, after a while, it's a process.
Yes.
People that abuse, they don't just always initially start with that. They start as the sweetest, most charismatic people that you can imagine. So in your mind, they would never hurt you. That's how they get you. It starts with the mind. Then once they get you, then all those small things start until eventually they'll push you. You know, and of course I didn't push you. I just went past you. Small little things. Now they're playing with your mind. No, you ran into me. You know, and it's like, so going back and forth. So it's really a game. And for me, I didn't realize it. And when I did realize it, I still didn't realize it. Because you're already involved in that.
Yes.
And so I think that's the biggest thing. So for me, like, even if you reach out to help, a lot of people are like, okay, you probably gonna go back to him. So, and you do, because at that point, if nobody comes to your rescue, nobody wants to help you out of that situation because they feel like, okay, you're gonna go back to him, then you probably will, because now you have nobody.
And not just that, but even if a woman like decides in her mind that she wants to leave, I think that society pressures her to stay, especially when there are children involved, or you have a marriage that looks a certain way, or you all held to this certain standard. It's like, oh no, you can't leave him.
Right.
He's too good. Look how he's taking care of you. Or it's these remarks that people make that kind of, I mean, once you gather that self-confidence to say, okay, I can do it, I can leave. It's these standards by society that kind of, puts that fear into you.
Well, let's move on. We're going to move on to another quote from Sister Charlene, and it's from her article. I don't know if this is necessarily her quote, but we're going to deal with this piece of information. So it says, "We are in a crisis. We often talk about the external, people outside of our community to seek to do us harm. And that is real danger. But the silent killer of black women is at the hand of those within our community." And this is by Dr. Thelma Bryant Davis, who is a licensed psychologist. So how do you all feel about that? We are actually living in the community with our most dangerous enemy. We're sleeping with the enemy. So can we kind of talk about that?
I think again, this as you started out the show, you said we have to go to the root of things.
Yes.
Because right now, even with statistics, these are statistics of things that are happening now. These are things that are happening. They didn't come up out of a vacuum.
That's right.
We didn't all of a sudden one day wake up and there's a domestic violence crisis.
Yes.
Right.
It's a learned behavior, right?
Yes.
That is discussed all the time. Generate hurt, as the statement goes, hurt people, right? But how far back does that go?
That's right.
It starts somewhere. We were brought to the shores of this country and placed in a violent environment.
Right.
We were placed in an environment where we saw the worst things happening to us. As Sister Quayla said, it's the mental mindset games. Now, when you, as a man, see a man who is taking care of your woman, which at that time was a slave master, and he does something to teach a lesson, such as incidents that have been recorded, such as putting a woman that is pregnant with your child between two horses and pulling it apart till that baby drops to the ground. And you can't do anything about it. And if you do anything about it, you get beat. Now, how many times have we experienced these traumatic psychological things and beat ourselves and not get ingrained in us that same type of behavior? Because as I'm sure we're going to go into later in this program, the conditions that's causing this abuse, so there is no excuse for abusing a woman. But when you're in a vice grip, when you're angry, you know how you do something explode out of anger. We're all mothers up here. We've probably done it with our children. Like, They took you all the way up here, and
15.
you explode, right? And everybody in the vicinity gets the wrath unless they start scattering. You know how to do it. You know, and the children, they learn after what, take cover. She's lost, right? So the black man in this society is in that type of situation too. So you went from somebody who was providing all your needs, as meager as they were, and providing the needs of your children. Then you're released from that patriarchal society, but you're then thrown into another society where it's like, oh, you're free, but we're going to cut off every avenue for you to provide for your family. So we fast forward to today. And most of the people in jail for domestic violence, they regret it, as Mr. Parker has said. They regret being there because it came out of passion, anger, frustration. Because as men, as taught in the Holy Quran, are the maintainers of women. And when I can't maintain you, you become dissatisfied in your nature. Then that stereotype that you said is the mad black woman, she can't surface. The net can't start to roll. We wonder what you're going to do. We got these babies here. You do something about it. Well, now he's rising up. We don't know how to respond. He doesn't know how to respond. Now we got a war zone in the house. But it's engineered. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's real. It's engineering. And so we have to look at all of this in light of that, and we have to start going back to a re-education process. But we got to go to the root and then build from there. If we don't start defining and explaining how it came about, then we really can't start the change process.
Sister Donna, you said a lot that we are going to deal with, and we got a question, but we're going to unpack a lot of that. We have a question from our sister Ida.
Yes, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Okay, you're talking about 4 women, right, in that particular article. But we could say, okay, 4 women, 400 women, 4,000 women,
Yes, ma'am.
4 million women.
Yes.
Been going on a long
Yes,
time.
ma'am.
So we got a lot of statistics, right? But Sister Donna, you were touching on the root of the problem. Now I'm talking about black women. That's what we're dealing with today. Black women. And you brought up the slavery. Of course, all of that's true. The only difference in slavery, we loved each other.
Oh, wow.
Those men died
Interesting.
protecting their families, their wives, their children.
Good point. Yes,
So
yeah.
it didn't start, that type of abuse didn't start, I don't believe, in slavery. I don't think that was, the treatment of us was ingrained, the oppression was not against each other.
Right.
That came much later. And I'm being probably probably maybe the oldest person in here. Growing up, we didn't see that kind of stuff. That wasn't going on 50 years ago in our community, in our families. I mean, as a young woman, it was like 14 of us, 7 girls and 7 boys. You couldn't hit one of my sisters. You were gonna get beat down by my brother. My dad was coming with a shotgun. That's real. He did that. So this started of late years, and I think we're going to continue to have statistics, but it's like you said, Sister Donna, the root of the problem. And I had actually responded to a post in Facebook. I don't know if you all know Brother Gary Muhammad. And I was talking about this and the disrespect of women. And he responded to me and said it was a lack of self-love. And I actually got angry. I got angry, but he explained it, and I'm like, wow. And then he reminded me, he said, didn't Osama bin Laden Muhammad say that 75% of the work is... I mean, I just had to like, okay, you are making perfect sense. It blew me away.
Sister
It blew me
Ida.
away. Because you're talking about that tone that comes up in the man, but what are we taught? We're taught to be able to speak a word and give him ease of mind. We don't know how to do that because we're not employing the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Sister Ida. You really... You're going to take us right on into the next segment of the question. And the next part of the article is for black. It says for black women like other women, threats come most often from people who we know them, claim to, two words in the same, execution style and love. I mean, how can we, let's kind of just deal with that a little bit. I know it seems like it might be a little bit too overwhelming, but see, this is what we have been given through the teachings of the Most High Elijah Muhammad from the Honorable Minister was Farrakhan. We can deal with this now because we understand the root of love. We understand that that's not love. That's not love. But how can a person say that they love but do such things? So can we kind of deal with that a little bit?
I would say, to me, love is an action word. So anybody can say I love you. It's duty. And for me, what I've learned is that you can't love me more than you love yourself. Period. So if a man say he loves you, but he's not taking care of himself, he's not eating properly, he may be drinking, he's smoking, you already abusing yourself. You mistreated me, then you don't love yourself. So you can't love me. So we have to, like Sister Donna said, we have to re-educate ourselves. It's a whole dynamics missing in our communities. Fathers. Like I said, I never knew what domestic violence was. My mother never was abused. I've never seen that. I've seen it in a movie where, I can see Tina. Other than that, that's what I saw. But I never witnessed abuse. But again, to me, if my father would have been there, he would have gave me tips and hints on what you do not tolerate, what to look for. This is not love. If a man does these things or says these things to you or treats you like this, that's not love. But you got women growing up in communities where they've never had any image of a man in their lives. So when that man comes along and he says, I love you, then you take it. And then we already have our own issues. We're insecure. We're going through things growing up because, again, if you're raised by a single mother, all you see for me is a strong woman. So that's what I know. So of course, how I talk, how I am, I have this strong woman personality. When I talk to a man is firm. I'm not gonna just, so I don't know how to even talk to a man properly. I'm not educated properly. So I'm gonna accept this man because he's telling me he loved me. I've never seen it. I think it's love and it's not. So now I got this man here and he's abusing me, but he's saying right after he abused me and beat me up, when I look in the mirror, I love you. I love you. And if you know anything about like Dianetics, those are engrams. So as soon as he hits me and then turns out and say he loves me, that's implanted in my mind. So now I think this is love. And you can't tell me it's not love. Or after he beats me up, he buys me something. He cleans up the house. He does all these beautiful things to where I'm like, he's just not that bad of a person. Y'all making it seem like, and everybody's like, you need to get away from him. But that's the cycle. So it's an up and down cycle because you think that he loves you, but he don't even love himself. He don't even know who he is. So the men have to be re-educated.
Sister, Jaquela, as you're talking about the love, the root, we're not coming together properly in the first place. As you said, love. The Sister Ida talked about when she was growing up, there were marriages, many more marriages than there are today. We're not getting married. We don't know how to come together properly. And even though the abuse was not against each other during that time, that mindset was put upon us. And then when you create an engineered society, it just kicks in. We go to automatic habit. We reach way deep into our gene pool. If somebody comes to me and say, oh, you look just like your great grandmother, that means I reached way back into that gene pool. Well, we reach into that gene pool in a lot of different ways. So coming up out of that, we had to struggle on figuring out how to come together in relationships, how to be a husband and a wife. Some were successful, some were not. You said if I had a father, he would have given me tips. I have a great father. And he didn't give me tips per se, but his very persona gave me the tips.
Yes, ma'am.
He's not a Muslim in terms of being in the Nation of Islam, but he went by this principle in the Holy Quran, men are the maintainers of women. He maintained our family. And because of that, the way that he did it, his being was my example, was my tip. So much so that when I went, well, not necessarily looking for my husband, but when I saw a man, that was the criteria, a standard. Later. And I say later because the power of images, perception. Like you said, you looked in the mirror. Here's a good example of images and perception. There was a show that used to come on called Good Times. Many of us are probably familiar with it, right? And James Evans was this strong man. He was this father, right? But they couldn't navigate ahead. And the theme song says, good times, ain't we lucky we got them. Why? You know, because you got a turkey or something like that. But this is how strong the image is. I grew up in a typical middle class family. Mother, father, the president of the home, siblings, all that. But this image that was constantly put in front of us on Good Times as a show, I desired that life. I thought that was so cool. So I wanted to live in a housing project. Not the nice house that our parents provided for us, where the lights was always on and the utilities and all that, that the maintainer was making sure that happened, that my mother had a choice to work or not. But I'm like, I want that. So much so that I went out seeking a man, a brother from the projects. Because it's like, okay, well, if I can't live there, let me get as close as I can get. That's the power of the image. So that image, so when he tells you, I love you, it wasn't until later, and really after coming into the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I had that different lens, like, oh, the maintainers. So subconsciously, I began looking for somebody like my father, somebody that would maintain me like my father. And so that's what love looked like to me, because it was predicated upon duty. But unfortunately, we don't know that, because we now have generations coming together improperly, not based on duty. Generations now coming together in a violent environment, and that's what love looks like to us now.
Once again, a very powerful statement, Sister Donna. She's getting ahead right now. I wanted to kind of incorporate Sister Ida's comments and Sister Donna's comments, because I can see what you're talking about. You know, Sister Ida, when you said you didn't really see that back then. But then couple that with, you know, what happened in between 2019 and back in the time when we were able to see this. There's something was engineered. There was something that was installed in our communities that caused us to be this way. But Sister Donna's still dropping all these nuggets, but we're going to get to it in a minute. So Sister Taquela, she kind of mentioned earlier about the image, how it's misperceived, how we have misconceptions about what an abuser looks like. And Sister Charlene, she mentions in the article, she highlights that the sister, Dr. Bryan, who's the psychologist, she says that usually that caricature is someone who is low income, someone who's on drugs, and someone who lives in the projects, some kind of aggressive brother. You probably tattooed all over the place, and, you know, in the gym, hitting bad. So this is the image that's projected. But Sister Taquela, she helped us to understand, you know, that's not what we're looking at. It's actually deeper. There's actually something going on with the black man in particular that needs to be addressed. And also in the black woman, it needs to be addressed. But because the black man is the maintainer, or men are maintainers, that's something that we need to go to the root of, because he is the one that has been destroyed. The black man, his position is the one that has been taken. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he helps us to understand that, you know, as women in our MGT class, whom he is the head of our class. He is the head of our MGT class, and he helps us to understand this. And these are the things that we are learning in our class. These are the things that we talk about, because the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad wants to rebuild our families. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is working to continue that effort and that mission with the MGT class. So we're going to go ahead and moved on. Now, there are some legislation, that's taking place. They're trying to curtail or prevent or end this. In February, there was a bill that was included in Ohio State Legislature in the name of our sister Aisha Fraser. It's called the Aisha's Law, and it has 3 parts. Basically, it's to provide a questionnaire to the victim through the police and a domestic violence advocate. So you'll have the police there, and you'll have a domestic violence advocate there with the victim with this particular questionnaire. Okay, so that's one part. So the victim will be referred to a community committee made up of the police and, of course, an advocate, a domestic violence advocate. And the offender would be prohibited from pleading down a violent felony to a lesser charge. So, you think, is this good enough? Are we going to be able to, how do y'all feel about this?
I don't think it's good enough. It's just, to me, it's the same with just anytime, one of us commit a crime and we're placed in prison, if you don't take those men or women out of prison and re-educate them, the cycle will reform them. Yeah, it's gonna continue. That's one of the issues we have. Like I said, you got men, if they come out of prison, they don't have jobs, they don't have money, you don't give them no clothes. I mean, some of them walk out and have nothing, they have nobody. If they've been in there 20, 30 years, everybody that they've known, if they haven't passed away, they don't know them. They're strangers. So you have them come out, they have nothing. Where do they go? What do they do? That continues the cycle of now I'm about to go rob somebody, I'm about to go kill somebody, or I'm going to manipulate a woman so I can live with her and move with her. I'll probably abuse her because I'm there, but I'm going to find some woman that's insecure, low self-esteem, and I'm going to latch on to her, and the cycle is going to continue. So even with the felony, it's not going to make a difference. We just need re-education.
So I think, I agree, sister, but it says it was a bill to better protect domestic violence victims. I think that the best way to protect a domestic violence victim is prevention.
Yeah.
So there has to be also programs in place that are educating, because this is this reality, So it has to be educating women and girls, and men too. So it has to go further than just laws and bills. Right.
Exactly. And it seems like to me that has always been this society's way of handling things. You don't get in and get with the people or talk with the people and help the people. You don't get in and try to assess the problem inside out. You want to come outside in and just throw a little crumbs on the situation, and then just say, okay, y'all deal with that, and we'll throw a little money out of it, and then just throw you right on back out there. No real help, no real reformation, nothing that's really taking place. But this is the reason why the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan are so valuable to the black community, because we don't sit up, or he doesn't sit up on a high horse and say, well, I just want to send some people there. No, he goes into the community. We go into the community because we understand that our people need to see us there. It's time out for us as a people, allowing politicians and all of these people in government to feed us all of these lies. It's time for us to get up and go in our community, ourselves, and help our sisters. And this is the power that we have as MGT. We can go into our communities and help our women and help our children, because they all these little people that's running around here, they are ours. This is our responsibility. So, that really kind of reached me, because I know, I sense that Sister Charlene probably put that information in the paper, because that's difficult. And we're tired of people just giving us handouts. And then when Mr. Louis Farrakhan is telling us we don't have to have handouts. We got God on this side. We got God present. He's here to give us everything, all of our inheritance. And here to give us respect. And here to give us love. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's go into that aspect. Was that a question? Did I see something like that?
I just want to make a comment if I
Yes,
may.
ma'am.
Sure. You know, how can we expect the same people, although we haven't gotten to that issue yet, that created the problem, to now come in and solve it? Isn't that what we were taught, that how they would keep us divided? They don't have the answer.
We're gonna make that the theme of the next party. 'Cause how can we expect, we said again, Sister Ida, how can you
Those that
expect?
create the problem now gonna come in and solve it. No,
We
they're
cannot
They're gonna
expect
create
those
more
to
problems.
create the problem to come in and solve it. So guess what? We got a teacher now that's gonna come in and solve the problems. But that's the aspect that I wanted to deal with from the Final Call newspaper. So I hope that we've received something from this, some education. Please get your paper. Get your paper. Get the Final Call newspaper. Open it up and understand what you see on the outside. It's a theme. It's something that paper is full of, and it's always dealing with a topic that we need to know about. It's always dealing with something that we need. And then, of course, you have page 20, which you have the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan. This particular article was his acceptance speech on the impact. I think he received the Women of Impact Award. So he said a few words. This is on page 20. There's always something there for Minister Farrakhan to hear. And also, we have, you can get your books, tapes, videos. You can order it right from here, right from the Final Call newspaper. And I think the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is right before him. I'm thinking. And, okay, so, and then we have the article of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And this information is the divine guidance of the outside that's actually bearing witness to what we are experiencing in the last days. That's why this is called the Final Call. That's why this paper is absolutely vital to our existence at this time. This information is important, so please, let's get this paper. So I want to thank Sister Charlene again for her contribution to the Final Call newspaper. So we're going to, yes, we're going to kind of go into the root a little bit. So the minister has done several lectures on domestic violence, and we have a lot of input, we have a lot of misconceptions, it's just sometimes it seems like domestic violence is a mystery. Like it's kind of spooky a little bit, but it's not. It's not spooky. It's real, and it can be eliminated. And through the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and through a well-established class, or two well-established classes in the Nation of Islam. That is the Muslim Girls Training and General Civilization class and the Fruit of Islam class. All right? So we want to kind of start dealing with what's going on at the root. And it might feel kind of awkward because we've never really thought about this kind of thing before. But the minister, he said that there was never a time that so many black women and children were so abused, misused as it is today. He said that violence in the home is so great that every teacher or leader of any consequence should begin to look at the destruction of the family and the black community and address these with truth. You know, so the politicians or the people that are setting up this legislation, we got to do more than that. And he said that we have to address this in truth. So what does that mean? Can you all start us off? How do we begin to address that in truth?
I guess in the same lecture, he says that the problem is today that we as men have lost the knowledge of how to handle ourselves. So it becomes exceedingly difficult for us to handle our mates. And then in another lecture, I heard him say that authority coupled with ignorance it produces destruction. And so that's what we're seeing. If they have the authority, and I think that men know that they are authority figures, and the woman is under his authority. but when they don't have, like he said, the intelligence that they need or the knowledge of how to handle themselves, you know, it kind of produces the, you know, what we see now in domestic violence. And so, it was another point I wanted to make.
You actually, this is getting started now, because along with that, the minister talked about us being a natural force. So we're going to naturally come together. Even though we crazy, it doesn't stop that we're going to naturally come together. So men have lost the knowledge of how to handle themselves, and it is exceedingly difficult to handle our mate. Okay, so he don't have knowledge of himself, and now he can't handle our mate, but we still getting together. You know, now what Mr. Farrakhan said, nature forces us to come together, although we do not know how to come together. We make each other miserable. All right? Now, we're coming together naturally, but we're not coming together meeting of the mind. So let's talk a little bit about that, as far as how can we start coming together from here instead of the ways, you know, down. How are we gonna come together at the head?
I think that goes right into the root of what was mentioned earlier. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught women that 75% of the work is with the women. Now, on the surface, that might seem like, wow, really? You all just said the black man is the problem right now. He don't have a job, he's not providing, we're dissatisfied. Work with him. Fix him. Fix him, I'll be straight. But we birth them.
Yes.
We nurture them when we're in our right mind. But we nurture them one direction or the other. We either nurture them towards being a proper man, or we nurture them towards that very man that we're complaining about laying up next to us today. That man that is abusing you was somebody's son. Okay, he didn't spring up fully grown. He came through the womb of a woman. What were her circumstances? What was she going through when she was pregnant with that child? So we, as was mentioned earlier, we have to learn who we are as women. And as you said, one of the things the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did was he set up a class that's just for women. It's a class just for us. No man is permitted into that class, because he said there's no man qualified to teach this woman, to reform this woman, because where there are no decent women, he said, there are no decent men. Why is that? Because whatever we produce comes forth one way or the other. But he said, wherever you see a no good woman, she was made that way by a no good man. There's a cycle that continues. But once you start letting me know who I am, once I understand that nobody walks this earth except for coming through me as a vessel, when I say me, of course, women, collectively, think of the men that we love and admire, all the way down to the prophets. Jesus had a mother. In the Holy Quran, there's a whole surah, a chapter named after her called Maryam. Moses had a mother. Muhammad had a mother. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, whom we admire, has a mother. So I have power, but I don't know it. And once I understand that and assume that role, that power, once my mind is reformed, then I'm not going to accept a certain behavior from you. Then you can't play the mind games with me. Because then I'm going to be like, you need to get up out of here with that stuff. As we say in the Christian world, get thee behind me, Satan. Or in street terms, ain't nobody got time for that. So we won't accept that. I just recently read a quote where somebody said, we actually teach people how to treat us. Good or bad. If my response is to cower, then I have now shown you, oh, this is what works. This is how I handle you. And I'm not saying women, we need to raise up man to man, face to face, because then that's how we start fighting, right? That's how we, as Minister Farrakhan said, they start living in our mouth like a dentist. But standing up in my righteousness, Because when I know who I am, you can't treat me that way.
That's right.
My whole being, my whole persona, my whole aura won't allow it. You won't even have a thought in your mind to approach me in that way. In fact, your thought and every thought of any man around me is to protect me.
Yes.
That's going to be your thought. Why? Because of how I carry myself. Because now I've learned that I'm a woman of God.
I think that's, I heard a key word there. You said God. And I think that's the issue with a lot of us. We don't know, we have not learned how to make God or Allah sufficient. And so you mentioned the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and he tells us all the time, when growing up, he did not have a father there. And he said in these words, there was no man that could handle his mother. And she wouldn't accept anything less than what she knew she deserved, because she knew she had 2 boys that she had to raise into men. And that if you accept something into your home, that's not less than a man. Now you're teaching your sons, this is the standard. You've given them the standard. This is the standard. And they grow up to be abusers, or whatever that man is, that's what they're going to grow up to be. And whatever you accept in their mind, that's their example of how to treat a woman. And so sometimes breaking that cycle starts with you making God enough. And we have to have a certain level of discipline, because naturally, like you said, we are drawn to each other. It's just in our nature. And so it kind of seems difficult to do something that's against your nature by abstaining, from men. If you can't find the right, because a lot of us, if we can't, find the right man, sometimes we settle for less than we know we deserve, just because we miss that. We kind of long for that comfort, that companionship. And lust, that lust, and that's another part of it too. Like in the nation, as women, we are taught how to pray and how to fast, because in fasting we're disciplined. If we can discipline our diet, our stomach, then we can discipline our sexual desires as well. And so it's really a lot that goes into that. But Allah is sufficient, and a lot of, like I said, a lot of women, it's just a fear of being alone. But what do you fear most? The being alone, or raising your sons to be the very thing, that you dislike? That, you're raising children. We're raising human beings that's going to make up the world. And how that man treats you is going to be the example of how your children are going to treat other women. So we have to stop looking at it from an individualistic standpoint and realize that how we're raising our children, what we allow into our homes, it doesn't just affect us, it affects the entire world.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Real quick, the scriptures say, how can they know except they have a teacher? We didn't know. We were trained a certain way. We've been educated a certain way. We've been reared in a certain type of system. So it does take a paradigm shift in our thinking, our teaching, and training to start producing this. And we have it, because you talked about the legislature not going far enough, because you talked about preventative measures. So we also have to deal with those, though, that have done it. Well, the Nation of Islam has a prison reform ministry. And those brothers are getting true reform, reformation. True reformation. And so they're coming out with a different mindset and making a positive impact on the community, whereas before they were detrimental and destructive to their very environment. They're coming out, they're getting married, they're family men, they're striving, they're doing great works, and they're going back and reaching for others like them, but they heard a word. That also showed their value. So again, how can they know except they have a teacher, which was said at the beginning, we have to retrain, re-educate, reform. Those who know, we're held responsible. And we got to do more.
And I want to add to I heard Mr. Louis Farrakhan in How to Give Birth to a God, he said, relish the womb. But he wasn't just referring to this womb, he was referring to your mind. And I think us as well, women, that we have to start guarding ourselves. We have to start guarding like our homes and protecting our mind, like music and television and all these things, because like Sister Tamiko was saying, it's natural for you to incline to the man or the woman. But a lot of these things that we see, we look at the movies. You know, you by yourself, you alone, you watching these crazy movies, and this stuff is telling you, you know, to do these things. You seeing people shacking up, and you seeing women who lonely, and now they just go out and get them any type of man. You got people sitting up at the bar, it's late, and they need somebody to talk to. These are things that's going on, and then your children, you let them watch TV and be on, you know, their phones all day in and day out.
So we do know the one way that we come together naturally. But we mentioned when there is no meeting of the mind. So could it be that the answer to the end of domestic violence, could it be that it is also in our nature? If we naturally come together in a physical sense, then how did God make us naturally to come together? And Sister Donna mentioned it earlier. It's the roles. It's our nature. Following our nature is the answer to our problem. Who is the man? The man is the maintainer. Who is the woman? The woman was made to be a what? A comforter and a consoler. Okay? So those roles have been changed. They not only have they been switched and changed, they've been kicked out the back. Now, what is the result of that? So let's look at some of what the minister had cited. So we already know murders are not committed by strangers. They're most of the time committed by a person that is either a friend, a relative, an acquaintance, or a lover. Act of crimes is more than likely to be out of a crime of passion with the intent to kill. The intent to kill. It is triggered by money, sex, or a third party, or instigator, what we call it. And they are usually drunk. All right? Often a child is assaulted or killed merely because the child is just there, just present during the outbreak of the violence. And so this is some of the actions that's actually stemming from something that needs to be corrected in the nature. All right? Okay, so the minister reminds us that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked us to not bring guns into our home, period. In the Nation of Islam, we do not carry guns. The believers do not carry guns. We do not have guns in our home. And this is, he taught us, this is why. He said the Honorable Elijah Muhammad knew the tendency we had to settle all our disputes with a gun. He wanted us to build the intelligence to deal with our problems properly and not rely on a weapon to solve our problems. So we are allowed, not legally, but we are allowed to have a gun in our home. You don't see a lot of people going into our home trying to take our gun unless they know we have it illegally. The enemy wants it there. He wants us to have a gun in our home so we can kill each other. Because he knows we are not intellectually ready to deal with each other's mind. He already knows. That's already something we cited earlier. All right? Anyone want to add to that?
That's, you know, that is really critical because you brought up the passions that arise, the things that we do and the intensity of the moment, which bear witness to why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said we should not have guns in our home. I want to just quickly refer to another article that was in the Final Call back in 2007, Domestic Abuse Affects the Community. And it ties into what you said, and it tells the story of, and I think this may have made national news, but Tanisha Thurman, she was a teacher, and her brother, I can't remember if it was her husband or the man that she was just with, he killed her. And I pulled the report because they made an appeal. He made an appeal because he pleaded guilty. I didn't kill her, but he was trying to get his sentence changed. And then the thing that the attorney said at the defense counsel said, conceded that Allen killed Tanisha. He argued only that Allen acted under a sudden and intense passion that mitigated the offense to a second-degree murder.
So he's like, I did do it. But I was so inflamed with anger and passion. So we use these weapons because they're there. And as you said, there's not a meeting of the mind. When you don't have it there, you can't use that gun.
Yeah.
You know, you can, even though some women can get beat to death, I can kind of come back though, at least from a fist in most instances. With the weapons, there's no coming back. There's no coming back. But again, it goes back to the training how to meet the mind. How to meet the mind. And that goes down to an understanding of our nature. Because you said that we're meant to console. And I know that today we have a mindset of, I'm an independent woman. So we'll bristle up at that. Yeah, I ain't got time to be doing that. I'm not trying to cook. And we bristle up for it. We became, but we, again, going back to the root. When did we become that? Right. When he was no longer able to maintain us, then you say, okay, I got to take care of myself. Then a mother, strong, black, female-headed household, then puts that into her girl child.
Yes.
Girl, don't rely on no man. You always have your own. Keep your own. And so we continue to do that. Well, I spoke about my household earlier. My mother never said that to me. So I didn't actually even know, I promise you, until I was like in my 40s, that women told their children, don't rely on a man. So I grew up with that mindset. Now I'm not fearful that something going to happen. Something happened to my husband or something happened to my marriage. I would be okay. I'm not concerned about that. But that came out of a need not being met, not being fulfilled. So we think I'm independent, and we lose that desire that God made for us to console him. You don't have a problem with consoling somebody that works hard on your behalf.
That's right.
You don't have a problem consoling some. I don't have a problem cooking this meal when I know that you're going out there facing this man and you're not forcing me to face him too. You know, you are doing everything that you can so that, I can be maintained. If I'm out there working, it's because I want to.
Yes.
Not because I'm trying to do your part and my part.
Okay, I want to kind of push this along because we getting into the meat of it. So I'm going to throw another quote out from the minister and see how you all feel about this. And he mentioned in the lecture, and I'm sure you all probably listened to it, but he said that the psychologists say we are disproportionately represented in homicide statistics because we are constrained from expressing our will to be in direct control of our course, of our destiny. And the minister said, this was close. He didn't agree with the first thing you said, that we're too tightly in crowded spaces, and he didn't agree with all that. He thought that wasn't right. But this is close, and I can resonate with this. I can see how this is close. He also mentioned that the black on black homicide statistics is a barometer of our oppression here in America, that we live in a white-dominated system that on one hand enforces a prohibition against taking out your aggression on white people who frustrate and oppress us. So I can strangle this so I can take this and shake her and say, don't you hit me back, don't touch me, but I'm going to kill her. And because they have a position of ownership over us, and because that's been drilled into our mind, we're not going to fight back. But what are we going to do with that aggression? What are we going to do when we get that, we get disrespected on our job, but I can't fight back because I got all these children. I can't fight back because, I got to keep food on the table. I got to keep transportation. So how is this affecting the black man when he can't fight back? Although, like the minister said, it's his nature to control. It's his nature to rule. So how does a ruler, a natural born ruler, deal with this kind of life?
Oh, man. Mr. Louis Farrakhan says in his article, The Cause of Domestic Violence, that when you have black men who don't have jobs, it's very difficult for them to stay in the home that constantly reminds them of their impotence. So they flee the home. He said many were married, had children, divorced, and had no stable relationship with a man. So men are abandoning and neglecting their children, and that's also a form of abuse. So, and then he also stated that the sister's problem is that we don't know how to handle today's black man. We don't know how to diffuse arguments. We don't know how to listen. One thing the minister said to me is that he said he would come home and he would go off, and his wife would be like, okay, she would say, what? He said she would listen the whole time. He could be going off on her, mad at the world. She wouldn't say anything till later on, after he calmed down and they're by themselves, and then she'll say, you handled the situation wrong, or you dealt with it the wrong way. So it's on both parts, the man and the woman. We have to learn how to deal with the man. We have to educate ourselves. We have to read. We have to study. We have to be in our class and learn how to take care of our husbands. But it's also the man, we have to understand his condition. He can't find a job. So he is angry. He is upset. And like for me, if I'm riding around certain neighborhoods and I'm seeing these big mansions, these houses, they got 2 and 3 cars, and I'm struggling with this little car. I'm saying as a man, I got this little hoopty, and I'm struggling trying to make sure I got gas. I'm paying the car note. My credit score is low, so I can't even get approved for what I want to get approved for. Those things gonna make you upset as a man. So we have to understand that condition to be able to better it. So the black man is the original man. He's the maker, the owner of the planet Earth. He has these feelings, and we have to be able to understand that. But we have to push those desires back to God and make sure that they know that Allah is sufficient, and be able to keep God in the marriages, in the household, and in the relationships. Because when God is not there, to me, that's how you have all these things going on. When you're not praying together as a family, when we're not reading and studying together, we're not understanding the dynamics of a relationship in a household, in a marriage.
I wanted to, I want to go a little bit deeper with that.
I think.
Because we can go a little bit deeper. We are taught that the original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe, and he is.
Yes, he is.
So I think it's a little bit more than anger.
Yes.
I think it's a little bit more than frustration. When you have a man who is from the divine, he's from God himself, and he has been placed by God's permission in a position of inferiority to his inferior, to someone that's younger than him, his subordinate. What is that literally doing to his mind? What is it doing to his mind? So when we, as husband and wife, man and woman, boyfriend and girlfriend, we're dealing with a man that has this kind of bomb effect going on with him. He can explode at any time. It's like approaching a tiger. It's like learning how to approach a tiger. I read this book. It's called Fascinating Womanhood, and there is a beautiful story about this little girl who wanted to comfort this tiger. All right, so she did it very patiently. She did it very gently. She just gave him meat, and she did it from a distance. For all she wanted to do was pet the tiger. So she threw the meat, and he would eat the meat, and then she was still at a distance. Then every night she would get closer and closer and closer, and all of a sudden she was able to touch that tiger. And I look at the black man like that. I look at him like a tiger, and sometimes you gotta, what the minister has said about his wife. So this is actually, sisters, this is who we're dealing with. And as students in the MGT class, we are taught how to deal with this mindset. Now, Sister Donna said something very powerful. Now, okay, everybody in this situation stressed out. The woman's stressed and the brother's stressed. Okay, so now you telling me I got to do all of this. I got to put all this energy into
this. Where am I going to get my strength from? Where am I going to get my back rub? When am I going to get my bad drawn for me?
My toes.
All right, now I know y'all just keep pondering over that. Now let me say this. Now the minister reminds us about those families in the Bible, Adam and Eve. You know, that's the fall of man and how they failed. Then their children were dysfunctional. You got Cain and Abel. You know, then you got Joseph and his brothers. They envied him. And then you got Prophet David and Absalom, who he was deceived. Then you got Jesus and Judas. So you got envy, jealousy, strife, and hypocrisy in the scripture. You know, so this is what is coming up in our homes. The minister says that your worst enemy is going to come right on up out of your loins. So it goes back to the nature. This is not something that we can combat with law. I mean, the only law that can combat this is God's law. We can't combat this with some little policy, some little, you know, it's wonderful to have the police and an advocate, but we need something a little stronger, you know. So I want y'all to kind of comment.
I'm sorry, but one thing that keeps coming up in my mind every single, during the discussion is the concept of the meeting of the minds. So when you talk about mindset, you have to ask ourselves, whose minds do we currently possess? So we have to. I think one of the facts that a lot of us keep missing is that we do have an open enemy. You know, and this open enemy, he has made us into himself. And every single thing in our environment feeds that satanic mind. And this is the beauty of Allah coming in a person of Master Father Muhammad. Is to give us a God mind. And to set up a classroom where that God mind can be fed. You know. And so that's one of the things that we have to be made conscious of. It's our true nature, because if we don't know our nature, we can't operate in something that we're not even conscious of. We don't know that we're supposed to be consolers. We don't know that the black man is broken. We don't know how to console a black man. You know, he doesn't know that he's been broken. He sees his frustration. One of his frustrations come out of seeing how the world around him is shaped to destroy him, but not understanding that it's been built to destroy him. So he sees it. And like you say, he doesn't know how to fight with that. Well, you need some help, you know. So Allah shows us. And when, you know, if he's in a position where I'm at work and I'm being disrespected, and I need to keep my job. Well, somebody teaches you that you're a God. Well, you have the creative capacity to create your own job. You know, so one of the things that we have to understand and accept is that we have the power to change the reality, the current reality. And that's the beauty of Master Farad Muhammad coming, is to teach us that just as there's a Satan mind in us, there's a God mind in us. And whatever we feed is what will grow.
The minister said that, he asked the question, what can women do to help the black man who this is very critical, to help the black man who desperately, I looked up that word desperate, like desire, desperately wants to be a man and has all the potential. So how can we help him? Then, you know, of course, in the Nation of Islam, we originated the popular phrase, living in your mouth like a dentist. We need to just take that a little bit farther. Living in our mouth like a dentist. So what is it about the mouth that will have someone in our mouth living like a dentist? And, you know, kind of think about that as far as this man's desperate desire to want to be everything for the woman. It's just that there's something blocking that, you know, the avenues are being blocked for him to be able to do this.
You know, and it ties into what Sister Aisha said too, the avenues being blocked. I said a few minutes ago that how can they know except they have a teacher, right? And we had a teacher, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wrote on the back page of the Final Call, well, Muhammad Speaks at the time, and now it's on the back page of the Final Call. And it talks about separation. As long as we live with white people, we will live under them. Period. They have proven that time and time and time again. So the situation doesn't get better. So we have to separate first in the mind, which leads to a physical separation. As you said, help a black man realize you can do this for yourself. Because as you said, it's a man under a child. What does the scripture say? Women are the oppressors and children will rule them. We're the original man. Our history shows that. But we are frustrated and we look crazy begging for a job when we create reality. But the reason we keep begging is because we can't see outside of that. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan coined a phrase, he who prescribes the diameter of your thinking dictates the circumference of your activity. So if they won't treat you right, they won't teach you right, and so we've been taught a thinking that is keeping us in this same little circumference. We can't even see outside of it. So we're frustrated. You said deep in us, the nature of our answer is there because the black man knows that he is a God deep down once it's pulled up into view. Once he's been told that, and he'll start to see, oh, I can create my own reality. But we need to separate. Separation is a must. It's a must. Because what are you doing? You just jump. America is falling. And all we're doing when we look at these jobs is jumping from one sinking ship to another. From one Titanic to another Titanic. But the time is for us to rock. Look at why so much attention was placed on our brother Nipsey Hussle. And he referred message to the black man, to people. And Lauren London, his soon-to-be wife, the mother of his child, saw him grow into a man that she could look up to. He overcame a gang life. He came up outside of that thinking. He has STEM programs, which, yes, it is sad that it took his death for the world to know him, but there's a reason for that coming about. But that's a good example. So he doesn't have any need to be frustrated. He helps people. He elevates the people around him. He helps the people that are circumambulating around him, not to bring them on to him, but to do better for themselves. And because of that, you have Lauren in front of everybody bearing witness to, this is a man. He's not a boy, he's a man. Because a man secures things, a man maintains things. A man is not jumping from this little sinking ship to that little sinking ship. If we look back over time, when I was coming up, there was the Big Six accounting firm. And it was such a big deal to become a part of these different Price, Waterhouse, Coopers, and all that. Then they started merging. Now there's none of them. And people were coveting these jobs. They don't even exist anymore. They failed. Things are falling. You know, we have Enron, all these different things. They're just falling like a house of cards, like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said they would. But in it is our lives. And I think Nipsey Hussle's life and death gave a good example of that. That our rise is coming. But we got to separate. We got to separate mentally. We got to separate physically. So that we can live in peace together. Because as long as somebody's engineering the circumstances so that we can be in service to them for when they need us and throw us away when they don't need us, there will be no peace.
That's right. And I think because we're under them and we are subjected to them, they give us this glass ceiling.
Yeah.
And so one of the most profound things that I heard the minister say in the lecture called Fear, Faith, and Truth, he talked about how the universe was like a giant breast. And he said that the white man can't stop you from pulling on the breast. He said, oh, the universe. He said he's on it himself. So if we look at what the white man has built, if we look at what what the white man has built. He built it up, one, because it was his time. Allah gave him the time to rule. In that time, we would be subordinate to him. But time dictates agenda. So
Yes.
once we know what the time is, and you see, like you said, America is falling because Allah has absolutely cut them off.
That's right.
And He has put us on. Now we have the ability to pull on the breath and get out of life what we desire. And Nipsey was an example of that. I believe that the story went that he went to the plaza and tried to do some kind of business transaction with them, and they denied him, and he came back and bought the desired plaza.
When he was a child growing up, the shop owner he didn't like the children hanging out there. He's like, when I grow up, I'm buying this. And he did. They're his tenants now.
And I want to add too, just reading Message to the Black Man, look at just the wisdom that he got from that, and he utilized it. So even with domestic violence, Allah is showing us that you get knowledge of self and knowledge of God, look at where you can go. And that's all you need. So he used that book to me, and he was so excited about it, and he's giving it to me. That's not the first thing you do when you see somebody and say, get Message to the Black Man. And T.I. is not the only one he gave that book to, and he offered that book to. So that was his book. That was the first thing that he go to, and then T.I. remembered that. So utilizing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the teachings that we're taught, that's showing us right there what we need to do to be successful in this world. And it teaches you even in that book how to take care of yourself, black women and black men. So it's showing us, how to build money, how to pool your resources, what you can do. So that right there is a tool on how to become a God. And then you give it back to your community. And once you get it, then you give it to your wife, you give it to your children, you give it to your community, and we go from there.
And a good example even locally, Dr. Carnita Atwater. She's leading the charge because Memphis 3.0 left out a great swath. But I had a chance to meet with her one time, 2 years ago when we were preparing for 10-10-15, the 20th anniversary of the Women March. And she was sharing how she was buying up New Chicago because she saw what others were doing in our community. And so there's one particular group of landowners that buy up everything. She blocked them in. They had a property and she bought up all the property around there. And see, now she has a leg to stand on that. She's leading this charge because she's also standing forth as an example. As a strong black woman example too. She is buying up the block and encouraging others. See, she could have went on her own way and be like, well, I got mine. But her desire is to make the community better. When we do this, then what can she do? She has a beautiful museum. Black History Museum, there's a banquet hall, so she can employ people. It's a community, it's becoming a beacon of the community over there in North Memphis, in that area. So we can then create our own opportunities.
Exactly.
She can hire people.
Sister Patricia Leach, I think she wants to say something. She is actually, probably, y'all may know, she knows a lot what she's talking about. So.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me this opportunity.
Yes,
Thank you so much for acknowledging Dr. Carnita Atwater and the Memphis 3.0. And I would just like to let your audience know, please support Dr. Atwater as she will be and asking for the community to please come out this Wednesday, April 17th, 2019 at the Dave Wells Community Center at 6 p.m. That's Wednesday at 6 p.m. when the city will come out and talk to the people. So we need to show up and show out, as our folk used to say, and let them know that we tired now.
That's right.
What center was that, sister?
Dave Wells, 915 Chelsea.
We'll be there.
All right. Okay. Well,
What time will it take?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
okay.
Yes, in relationship to the question that the minister wrote in the Final Call newspaper in making this black man, how can the MGT class help in that process?
Okay, I was going to kind of deal with that a little bit, but let's get back to the mouth. We actually just talked about a wonderful demonstration of a brother who has made a great contribution, which also demonstrates the potential of the black man, of our brothers, knowing that we have great leaders in our brothers, knowing that we have great men in our brothers. So let's talk about this this very popular dentist. You know, the black man not getting paid, but you know, he's doing a whole bunch of jam up dentistry. But the Bible talks about the tongue. So let's see what the Bible has to say about the tongue. So in James,
That's right.
James 3. We got a brother James behind the camera. Okay. Well, it's actually James 3:6. So let me see. Okay, let's see James 3. Y'all give me just a second, because there are some things we can do, and believe it or not, brother who asked the question, it really starts with the tongue.
Yes, that's true.
So James 3:6, it says, the tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. Now there's another one. There's one more that I want to look up, and that's Ephesians 4:29. All right, let's see.
Oh, can I uplift one?
Yes, ma'am.
There's one in the book of Proverbs that says,
Yes.
the soothing tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit.
What Proverbs what?
15 verse 4.
Ooh, read it.
It says the soothing tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit.
Wow. Okay, so that's very interesting, crushing the spirit. So we're going to come back, we can deal with that piece, crushing the spirit. Now, Ephesians says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So
That was
who
Ephesians
is
what?
that was Ephesians 4:29. So who needs to be built up?
The black man.
According to what are their needs? They first of all, their needs, as Corey said, they need God. We all need God, so that it may benefit our brother who's listening, and not for us to be careful. For us to be careful not to crush them. And this is exactly, we've done a good job crushing our brother. So it can be turned around, and I would humbly appeal to those of us in the audience, our sisters who may be struggling with this kind of life, but there are other things that accompany domestic violence that are in the statistics that are bad as well. You know, we have 90% of the homes headed by the female. Why? Okay, we have our communities are like, we have the uncles and we have, you know, the different cousins, and it's just, you just have different men coming in and out, because we're dealing with loneliness, we're dealing with depression, we're dealing with trying to, like we say, deal with that part of our nature and not trying to focus on the top part of building or joining our natures, you know, with our minds. So for the sisters who are looking for answers, for solutions to their problems, I would say, please find your nearest mosque and go to the MGT, GCC class. In Memphis, it's 873 bands on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. because this is where a woman of God is being made or being reformed. Okay, what you see here are women who represent not the coming of God, but the presence of God. That's what you see sitting up here.
I also want to add study group Friday.
Yes, Friday night study.
Improvement. That is what helped me to look at myself. and deal with some truths about myself that of course we don't want to deal with. So I think that everybody should come out to Friday night where you can dialogue with other believers and get into the mind of God that way.
Address.
873.
Thank you.
So, anyone else would like to share about, I guess we could go a little bit, what the minister says on some tips, but anyone, just kind of, let's kind of put some mass on what we're taught in class and what we really can do, because it's the tongue. That's the main member, but, the minister said, he said that, he said he likes to come home to a clean house, even though he may not be clean. He wants to be around peace, even though he has confusion. So how do we deal with this kind of reality? Because we may be confused too. We may not have any peace. So how can we bring him peace? How do we have peace ourselves? And before we go into that, we can go into the Holy Quran, where Mary was, there's a story in there about Mary having someone in charge of her. She was a divinely protected woman because she had a divine assignment. And she was protected by Zachariah. And Zachariah was a great caregiver for Miriam. And Miriam one day Zachariah brought Miriam some food. So when he brought her the food, he found that she already had food. So he asked her, "Whence come this, Miriam?" And she said, "It is from Allah. It is from God." So we have to have our food, sisters. We got to have our food. So when they come to give us food, we already got to have it. I'm not talking about the chicken sandwich with fries. I'm talking about, the knowledge that we get, the knowledge of self, and the knowledge that we are getting from this class. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan represents so much for us, but he is our Zachariah. He divinely protects us. He guides us and he helps us and he feeds us. So if you have a woman that's already being fed, then you know that you can expect some comfort. You can expect some consolation, because it's time for us to stop being divided, because that's what the enemy wants. He wants us to be divided, and he wants us to continue to look at each other as an enemy, but we are not enemies. We are together. We are man and woman, and it's time for us to start working towards that. And that is why, like I said again, why these teachings are so important. That's why the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is so valuable to us in our community.
No, I was just saying, we all won.
But yes, that's just, anybody else want to say something?
And I just want to add patience.
Yes.
That's one of the biggest things for me. Whatever comes back, seriously, patience is very important. That's something that doesn't come easy for a lot of us. These small things that we can't wait for, but even the bigger things, even with your husband and different things that you're going through, you have to learn how to have patience with not only your progress and process, but his as well. Because it's not going to be an overnight thing. It may take years. Even with him deciding, okay, I'm going to do for self, I might be broke for a while because I'm doing for self, but I have a vision and a goal, and so we have to be able to have patience to feed his mind and help him to nurture that vision and goal so that he can become successful. Because if we don't see it, how can we nurture him to see his own goal and dream?
So we are actually in a class where we are taught that the black man has been destroyed. We are taught that his position has been taken from him. We are taught that he is the ruler, or he is a man of God, and he is in charge. However, he can't get that in the society. But we are taught that we give him that in his home. We're taught to give him that in his home. And he can achieve that. He can be comforted in a sense to know that he can be respected at home. That he can be, cherished at home. That his children can walk and look up to him at home. And this is going to turn that tiger, calm him down, calm the beast down, and you'll be able to you'll be able to rub, be able to touch him. Whereas when he first comes into the home or through the door and everything is a disarray, then you're just about to get someone that's going to bite your head off. And then you bite his head off, and then both of y'all finna kill each other. So this is at the root, and we can actually start wrapping it up. I don't know if there was another question or not, but
I'd like to make a comment.
yes, ma'am.
Let us also, another article mentioned 4 women, but I'm sure all of us are aware, but just let it be known that domestic abuse is also perpetrated upon men as well. It's
Yes.
not only women.
Yes.
Men are abused also.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. I hope we were able to kind of sense that, because like we mentioned earlier, we're abusing each other. Everybody's being abused under the same roof. So when we start dealing with the root cause of everything, people have to take responsibility. We have to start taking responsibility for what we are doing. And that is what we are learning in these classes. We learn how to take responsibility for what we're doing as women, and the brothers, they learn what they need to do in their class and how to take responsibility for that. So when we get ourselves together individually, then that's when we can come and deal with the mind. So if there are no other comments, we're going to go ahead and close this out. Once again, I want to thank you all for joining us, whoever was able to tune in. I guess I'll look at the comments later. Thank you all so much. I do want to send a shout out to Joyce Cowles. I kind of wish she was here because she's a wonderful domestic violence advocate, and she's always out there fighting, always out there talking, always out there on behalf of women. So I just want to send a shout out to her, and thank you all for coming out. Thank you all, beautiful sisters, for coming out. And we will be doing this again. We hope that you all tune in again, and please do not forget to buy your paper. I will sell you a paper. If you need to buy a paper from Sister Tamika, I'll be your final call salesperson. So thank you all very much, and you all have a blessed day. Thank you all.